Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 8, Teri M. Brown.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with author Teri M. Brown. Teri M. Brown's work consists of novels like Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, An Enemy Like Me, and Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. She also has her inspirational book, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, about her tandem ride across the United States, which was released in February of 2025. This 3,102-mile journey, completed during the summer of 2020, helped Teri heal from an emotionally abusive 14-year marriage and gave her the courage to publish her first novel, which was her children's picture book, Little Lola and Her Big Dream, which was released on April 15, 2025. And she is also the host of the Online for Authors podcast. So Teri, thank you so much for being on the show. So before we begin, I do like to start off by asking this question. Tell us in your own words, who is Teri M. Brown?
Yeah, when people ask me that, it's like, oh gosh, where do I start? So I tell people I'm an author, but I am also an avid reader. I'm a podcast host. I'm a mom. I'm a grandma. I love to play bridge. I love to ride bicycles. I love to walk on the beach. So I'm all of those things, but I also really enjoy working with other adults, especially women and youth, who kind of are like lost, like they're trying to figure out their way. And I love to be able to work with them and talk with them and maybe help them see a path forward for whatever's got them stuck in life.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's always great for artists to have that support from other people, whether it's their family or other fellow artists. So I feel like that's very important. So I do want to get into like that the cycling that you've done, because I remember when I read that, I was like, wow, that's very impressive.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about that. So how did cycling across the US help reshape your perspective on both life and writing?
So riding across the United States reshaped everything there was about me. When this idea kind of came about, I had gotten out of a 14-year emotionally abusive relationship, and I really didn't feel good about myself. Even though I was now out of the relationship, a lot of damage is done. Even though there was a part of me, I think, that knew all the time that what I was being told was incorrect. You hear it over and over and over for 14 years, and it starts to really take effect. So I was doing a lot of things, but I wasn't really letting anyone know what I was doing, and I didn't feel like I was good enough. And then I met Bruce. He became my husband. But while we were dating, he told me that he had this dream to ride across the United States on a bicycle. Well, I had been wanting to do something big and bold. I felt like I needed to prove to people that I still had some value and some worth. Little did I know that no one else doubted me. It was me that was doubting me. But nonetheless, when he said that, I thought that would be an adventure. Count me in. Well, the crazy thing is at that point, I had not been on a bicycle in 40 years. So this was not Teri doing Teri. This was way outside of my comfort zone. So he and I started just, doing like practice rides here around our home and trying to get used to riding. And we realized very quickly that doing the tandem bicycle was going to be the best way for us to do this together, because he is an avid cyclist and I was essentially a brand new cyclist. And there was no way that in that short amount of time I was going to be able to get myself up to speed enough that he and I riding together on separate bikes was ever going to be comfortable. And on a tandem bicycle, you can't go any faster than the slowest person, and you can't go any slower than the fastest person. Like, we had to work together. So we started, riding on the tandem bicycle, figuring out things like gear that we were going to need. I mean, I had to start from the beginning. Like, what shoes did I want to wear, and what shorts felt the most comfortable, and could I find a saddle that I could actually sit on for 3,102 miles, like all of those things. And so we just started until it was time to go, but unfortunately COVID had hit. And so we were supposed to leave in the middle of May 2020. And the middle of May 2020, there was no going anywhere. You couldn't fly in a plane, you couldn't rent a car, hotels weren't open. I mean, it was crazy. And so we thought, well, we're not going to be able to go. And then things started opening up at least a little bit. Planes were flying, they were allowing people to go places. And we live on the East Coast and we were going to start on the West Coast. So being able to fly or at least rent a vehicle, I mean, we were going to have to do something to get out there. And we decided if we could leave by the middle of July, that we could still get across the United States before it got cold. And we were actually able to leave by the end of June, and that's what we did. And so we flew out to Oregon, and we started in Astoria, and we rode 3,102 miles, ending in Washington, D.C. Along the way, we raised money for Toys for Tots because my husband is a 25-year Marine, and this was like a fun way to pay something back in addition to doing this really cool adventure that he'd been wanting to do forever and that I decided that I was going to buy in on. We then also raised that money. But when we stopped, so on the last day, we're coming up to the Marine Corps Memorial, which is where we stopped. We thought that would be a fitting place. And we're coming up this hill, and he points to the flag, and he said, "Do you see that flag?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's it. That's the memorial. That's where we're stopping." And I started to laugh and then cry and then laugh and cry and laugh and cry. And I thought, oh my gosh, I made it all the way across the United States on a tandem bicycle. If I can do that, I can do anything I put my mind to. It's not a matter of can I do it? It's a matter of what do I want to do? And the answer was, I want to be an author. And 14 months later, my first novel came out.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that is such an amazing journey. I mean, just to start from something like, not being like that good of a bicycle rider, and then just from doing that amazing journey, and then from there realizing your passion. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, a lot of people like that, they have like stories like that. That's so amazing. That's actually one of the main reasons why I started to do this podcast, was just to hear people's stories. And everyone has such like an amazing journey, and or sometimes it could just be like an idea just kind of just hits them in the middle of the night, and that's what they want to do.
Right.
Or like it took this long journey to
figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that I like to remind people that this isn't just something that can happen to young people. I was 56 years old. I had been married twice and divorced twice. I had 4 children. I had a lot of things that were difficult in my life. And in a lot of ways, I thought I was done. I just felt like 56. What more can, this is it. I've done it. Whatever I'm going to do, it's been done. And yet that ride proved to me that idea was wrong, that there's still a lot of life to live. And now, 5 years later, I'm 61. I have 3 novels. I have a children's picture book, and I have a memoir about this trip. And I have another book that I'm currently writing, and another one that's sitting there desperately waiting for me to write it, and I keep telling it to be quiet so that I can finish the one I'm working on right now. So I think that the idea that, oh, I'm done, or I'm washed up, or I'm too old, or I'm too whatever it is, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too white, I'm too black, I don't care what it is that you're too of, you're not. If it's something that you want, I think that you can just run out there and if it's something you really, really want, you will find a way around the roadblocks.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there are a lot of things that could have stopped me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's one of the main things, like just kind of stepping outside of your comfort zone, because people are kind of so like scared of like the unknown, like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. I'll maybe just do something else just to be safe, and it's that little like kind of craziness that we have, like doing that. And then at the end of it, realizing that, wow, I think this is what I was meant to do in life.
Meant to do. Absolutely. And although I would never ride across the United States again, it's not that it was a horrible thing. It's just I don't need to do that twice. I do now enjoy riding. I enjoy cycling. I enjoy the feeling that I get as the wind's blowing by and everything else. I love it. But more than even learning that I loved that, I learned that whatever I love, I can work toward doing better, doing more of, My husband would tell everyone that the person who started the ride was not the person who ended the ride. I did a lot of changing and growing and shedding old stuff I didn't need anymore, fears and anxieties and things that, stinking thinking, all that stuff that you believe about yourself, and then you realize that it's just not true. And by the end of that journey, it was like, no, I really can. If I put my mind to something,
Yeah.
then I can do it. What could have stopped us? I hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years. I was, at the time that we decided to go, I was 75 pounds overweight. I wasn't athletic in any stretch of any imagination. And then COVID hit. I mean, COVID could have said, we could have so easily just said, we'll wait.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, everything kind of stopped because of that. But,
Right.
again, you just decided to do it. And, you just had this huge journey and, just this creativity kind of came into you to be an author. And, so it was meant to be. And I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
that you were
believe it
able.
was too. And I think that I tell people that what you need to do whatever it is you want to do is really inside of you. It's already there. Maybe it's buried and hidden and you're going to have to do a little digging. I had to do a little digging to find it. But the person that can do whatever it is that you're wanting to do lives inside of you. Now it's just a matter of giving that person the freedom to go ahead and do it. And sometimes that requires really getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yes, absolutely. So I did want to move on to my next question, which
Yeah.
was what overall lessons from that journey did it influence, like the characters and storytelling from like the novels that you've written, or what kind of lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, I think that it does. A lot of my characters, you'll see a lot of my characters that go from one place and really move into a new place where they've had to stretch and go beyond themselves. And so I think that I love a character like that you can see this immense growth because they were willing to step outside, either the box they had put themselves in or a box that someone else put them in. And then some of the lessons that I learned along the way, like, have big dreams, like don't stop dreaming. I like to give those kinds of things to my characters. Either they have quit dreaming and we're going to teach them how to dream again, or they're the big dreamer and you see that from the beginning and they're that person that continues going. So yeah, I think that seeing where I was and then getting to where I am helped me see what a really good character arc kind of looks like. Because I was someone who thought life was pretty much over and that I was going to be a grandma and, kind of live my life through my kids, and that was going to be the end of it. And now I'm living my life. And I like my characters to have that kind of aha moment too, where it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to do things other people's way. I can do them my way, and I can make a big splash in the world, and it doesn't matter if I'm 17, 47, 77, like it doesn't matter whatever age that you can do that. So I try to make my characters do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important for also other people to see that, whether reading it in a book or watching it on a film. It's like it gives them that motivation. Like, if that person can do it, maybe there's still that passion in me that can still do it.
Right.
It can definitely, it influences you. I mean, media is such an influential thing, like the books we read, the films we watch, the paintings that we see, it's definitely amazing just how much power it can have, and there's just like so many talented artists out there that are showing that, and maybe for one person, they may not understand it, but for another person it could just open their eyes like so
Exactly.
much, and just continue to do that passion that they wanted, whether it was painting or writing or filming, or anything like that. So I do feel like that's very important, not just for us to understand the passion that we have, but for others to understand the passion that they have. So
Right.
that is.
And that's why I love to see artists from all age groups and all walks of life, so that you don't get this feeling that, well, this only happens to, 40-year-old, people who live in a big city who have a certain amount of income. Like it can literally be anyone. You can have I've seen kids with passion projects that are just amazing to me, where you see these 8 and 9 year olds who are doing things like lemonade stands, and with the money that they get, they're crocheting scarves for the homeless, and I mean all of this stuff, right? And you think, wow. And then on the other hand, I talked with a woman not long ago who was 102 and just had started writing books at 90. And she's 102 and she's still writing books. And she now has poor eyesight, so she's learning how to use one of these dictating machines that then takes her words and puts them out so that she can get it to an editor, because she can't see the page anymore. And she's not letting that stop her. And so at 90 years old, she said, hey, I think I want to be an author. And I think, wow, I want to grow up to be her.
I mean, yeah, she was definitely finding a way, because again, if you're so passionate about something, you're going to find a way to do it. There's going to be obstacles coming your way. And, if you have that little voice in you saying like, oh, they're telling you to stop, you should just stop. And then if you listen to that, then you're not going to do anything with it. But for other people, if they're so passionate about it, all these little obstacles and things that get in the way, we're just going to find a workaround.
Exactly.
And again, it may not be, exactly how we pictured it in our minds, but I think just getting it done is like one of the most important things, because some people may start halfway and never finish it, or some people don't even do it at all. But for even just to finish it, I think is important.
And one of the rules that I kind of came up with when I was writing across is to like really define what success looks like to you, because know what that looks like. Because as my husband and I were riding across the United States, initially we had this idea that we were going to have to ride every single mile, and if we didn't ride every single mile, then we would fail. But that's pretty impossible, because there's going to be things that happen. We had a failure on the bicycle where we had to be taken a few miles to get to a bike shop. We had 10 miles of road that was torn up all the way down to the dirt. And there's no way you can ride a tandem bicycle across that. And so we had to be ferried across that. We had a day where there were horrendous storms coming in, and we were 20 miles from anywhere, and someone put us in their vehicle and got us to safety. Can you imagine if we had stuck with that first definition of success, even though we rode 3,102 miles, made it the whole way across the United States, we would have felt like failures. And so it's a matter of defining your success in such a way that you can actually be successful, so that if you have to do a workaround and it doesn't look quite the way that you thought it was going to look, that you can still say, I did it.
Yeah, exactly. You did it. That's like such an important phrase, however it turned out, whatever it may be, I did it, and that's so important. I did want to move on and ask you, like, how did overcoming personal challenges impact your writing style?
It's funny. I didn't do a ton of writing before all of this happened because I didn't believe in myself. So I had written some, but I think it was very tentative. And all of my characters were, I call them flat, because they didn't have a lot of depth to them. They were perfect because I needed my characters to be perfect, because I felt like I needed to be perfect. But once I went on the ride and recognized, no, what we want are characters that are human, that have strong feelings, that sometimes cry, that sometimes do not handle a situation correctly, that sometimes fall apart at the wrong time, just like I do. And that's okay. So I think maybe the ride helped me create characters that were more real, more relatable, because no one wants to read about someone who's perfect, and that no matter what's thrown at them, they come out of it looking like, like that it was easy and it was no big deal. Nobody wants a character like that. It's boring. And you don't even really like them, or at least I don't. I think, oh, I would never pick someone like that as a friend. I mean, how do you even relate to them? So I think maybe the ride helped me recognize that it's okay to be imperfect, and that's exactly what we need in our characters. We need them to reflect real people doing real life and finding it real hard sometimes. And when things are hard, we make mistakes and we do dumb things and we say dumb things and we respond in dumb ways and we do all of that stuff. And then we have to figure out how to apologize for it and how to make up for it and how to move beyond it and all of those things. And so I brought all of that into my books, and that really helped to strengthen my characters.
Yeah. That's great to hear because, yeah, I do feel like artists are imperfect in some way, like there's that thing, like just like where we came from, like the struggles that they've had to overcome, and I just think it's just like great to hear like like how much they had to go through just to like able to finish like that passion project of theirs, that
Right.
book they wanted to write, that film they wanted to make, and just how much they had to go through. And, maybe people may not see that, but just to like, like sit down and talk with them and just hear their story of like how they came from like an abusive relationship, or just like the area that they're living in was not very good,
Right. Right.
so all of those, like again, those obstacles that they've had to go through, but still managed to come out on top, or at the very least, like we said, just getting it done,
Right.
and them telling
Came through
themselves.
the other side one way or the other, right?
Exactly.
Something I've noticed is when I'm talking with a group of people, um, they may be somewhat excited about some of my books or whatever, but once they've heard me talk and they've asked questions and they find out my story, then they're even more excited about my work. And it's because they now have gotten a glimpse into that this wasn't easy. This wasn't me just sitting down one day and saying, oh, I think I'll write a book. And so I did. And I think that there is something about that that really ignites other people's imaginations, you know. And if she can do it, if she at 56 years old can decide that I've not written, but I'm going to now, and can do that and can be successful at it, well, then maybe I could insert whatever it is that they're wanting to do. Maybe it is write a book, but maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's learn to play the piano, or, maybe it's I've always wanted to try watercolors, but, that scares me. Or maybe it's I've got this song idea and I would love to find someone who can put it to music, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I feel like that's important, especially like when you're just starting out, or if you're like a young age, just like witnessing or looking around, like the people that you look up to, like your parents or your teachers, or guest speakers that come to your school and talk, and I guess like at first you kind of have that mindset of like, oh, this person is, oh, he's doing this thing, so he must have like this amazing experience and he must be doing great things. And then when they sit down and they tell you, where they came from and what they had to accomplish to get to that feat, it does open your mind like, oh wow, I guess it 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 wasn't that easy, but at the same time, because they're talking about how passionate they are, it gives the person listening that kind of passion, like, okay, maybe if that person could do it, I guess I could do it too. Because I know there have been moments, yeah, like where when I was younger and just seeing like 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 my teachers and my like any guest speakers that came to my school to talk, it really helped like my mindset of just like staying creative, and I mean, I was a very shy person in school, so I didn't really talk with a lot of people, but I was always like kind of always doing like little drawings and stuff. And I, at the time, I didn't think much of it, I just enjoyed doing it, and it wasn't until later on where I realized, oh, I think I could do this as a career, just by
Right.
seeing like the movies and like the behind the scenes and all the stuff that it take to make this film. And it's like, wow, it took like that many years to make it, or it took, so there's just so much inspiration out there that I feel like is very important to hear, especially like when you're just starting out.
Well, and when you're just starting out, yes, but also like for someone like me who had just gotten out of a really bad relationship and felt like my life was over.
Hmm.
How sad that, I got out of that relationship. I was 54 years old, and at 54 years old, I thought I was done.
Right. Yeah.
And how sad, Can you imagine if that had been true for me and I had just sat and done nothing between then and whenever I finally am really done with this world, right? And so I think it's good at so many different ages and stages. Women who are becoming empty nested. They've been moms this whole time, and that's kind of been like their role and their whole identity. And now the kids are moving on, and what are they going to do with themselves? Or people who have been in a relationship and find themselves now separated or divorced and having to kind of start over again, whether they're at 30 or 60. There's so many times in our lives where we find ourselves kind of drowning a little bit, like we don't know where we're supposed to turn next. And then to hear an inspirational story of someone who is either doing what you want to do or has come from a place similar to the place you're currently in, and you see that they've made it the other side of that place. So either way, having those kind of stories, I think, are really, really fundamental and very necessary to help kind of influence people to say, yes, I can do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whether you're young or you're, middle age, there's still like that passion in them, or they feel like, what am I going to do with my life? And, I mean, I guess I was fortunate to find it very early on, but then there are other people that it took them, like, as you said, like 40, 50 years old for them to find that passion of what they want to do.
And then the other thing that happens is you have a passion and it wanes. So like you enjoyed it and you had, you did it for 25 years and it was great, but it just isn't doing it for you anymore. So what do you do then? Oh gosh, now what do I do? Well, it's in those moments that looking to someone else, when you see, for instance, someone who has a second career, and they did this one thing and they did it well and they loved doing what they used to do, and then they did this kind of about face and put themselves out there on the line to try something new, and then were successful at it. And then it gives you that feeling that, hey, I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and even if you can't do it as like a full-time career,
right,
it's always good to do it just on the side, like as like a hobby or something like that, just to keep like that creativity kind of going, like when life hits you, and rough things start to happen, it's always good to just kind of go back to that little comfort zone of making like what you love to do,
right,
reading, writing, drawing, whichever it is. I do want to move on to my next question, which was, what role does historical context play in your novels and your characters?
So all three of my novels are classified as historical fiction. One of them is 1970s, and that really hurts my soul that that's considered historical fiction, because that means that I am historical fiction, and that just really hurts me a little bit. But my characters kind of dictate where they need to be and what their story is. And I'm currently writing a manuscript that is contemporary, so it's not historical in any way, because this character doesn't need to be historical. But the one that is kind of beating me in the head right now, that wants me to write it, we're back to a historical setting again. I love historical settings because there's so much information there about the time, about the place, about what it felt like, what it looked like, what people were doing, that there's a lot of information I can draw from and pull those tidbits that are going to really help move my character along. I also love being able to go back in time and discover and help other people discover that some of the very same problems we're dealing with today existed 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 350 years ago, that even though we have come a long way in many ways, through technology and other things, there are a lot of things that are pretty much the same as they've always been. Family issues, the dynamics that happen within families. Things like racism have been around since the dawn of time, and who were racist against changes, but that feeling or the xenophobia, the afraid of other cultures, right? All of those things have been in existence for as long as people have been in existence. And so being able to go back into a historical setting and talk about it, allows me to be able to say things that I can't say to someone, because that might start a fight. That might get someone labeled. That might, whatever it is, right? It's too touchy. It's too scary. No one wants to go there. But if you can do it in a historical setting, now people can kind of explore it. And it's not scary because it's not today. But in the end, people have told me over and over, wow, this really feels like today. And it's like, yeah, it's because, the further we go, the more we stay the same. Like, we haven't really changed that much. We'd like to think we have. And, we don't wash our clothes using a washboard anymore, but that doesn't mean that we don't have some of the same feelings that we've had for millennia.
Absolutely. And I mean, you see that just in films today, like dealing with, like you said, like just with racism, or just
Right.
like the rise of technology and AI, and there are a lot of films that talked about that sort of stuff like years ago,
Right.
and
Right.
some people were kind of like laughing at that, like, oh, that would never happen, and here we are today, and it's become like a part of our lives, and especially with AI, and how artists work are kind of like not getting like so much recognition, or just like,
Right.
what is real versus what isn't. It's kind of scary.
It can be. And I think that, AI is like a topic you and I could talk about for hours when it comes to creativity. When should you use it, and how can you use it ethically? Like, when is it okay? And for me as a writer, for instance, I do a podcast. And so when my podcast is done, I create a blog from that podcast. Well, I feed my transcript into an AI, and it helps me come up with a good blog post. And to me, I don't think that that's a problem, because I created the blog post. I mean, the podcast. And though that was my creation, and now I'm just having, essentially it would be like getting a ghostwriter to sit down and listen to it and help me create something. On the other hand, I would never write a novel that way and then put my name on it. That to me is unethical. And so there's this whole, like, what can you do? What should you do? How should you do it? And so for me, if I've produced it myself, and now I want to find another way to use it, and I'm the one feeding my work in there, then I don't mind using, like, hey, I need a 2-minute clip from this that's going to look really good on a social media, and I don't mind if AI helps me pick that clip. So I think there's just ways to do AI. But you're right, it can be very scary, because in a lot of ways now, I used to do a lot of work with small businesses where they would have me help them write their content on websites and things. And nobody wants that anymore. Oh, I could just throw it into AI, they say. Right? And so it does change. It has changed how people interact with one another, and what jobs are available and what aren't. And now today, if right now, if I were to turn a manuscript in, I have to sign something that says I did not use AI to produce that. There's a lot of things going on out there right now with that.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand, like, because there's so many like rules and regulations with
Right.
that. And I understand what you say, like you kind of use it as sort of like a ghostwriter, and that's kind of like what I would do, like if I have a script and I wrote it down, like it's my own words and all that stuff.
Right.
But if I need to have like a certain pitch, or just a way to kind of rearrange it,
Right.
then I would kind of throw it into AI and just see what it has to say.
What it has to say. And even then, though, I still go back and check through it, because I find things that are either mistakes, or I would never say something that way and it doesn't sound like me at all, and I don't want my brand to be something different. So even when using it, you do have to go back and say, okay, but now I have to make it me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I feel that's important, like, because other people, they could just, I mean, you could really just put in, like, write me a short film, like a 10-page screenplay, and it'll do it. But, there's just
is it any good?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Does it have depth? Does it have characters that mean something? And then not only that, but to pass something off like that as your own. Now we've crossed ethical boundaries. Like I said, I don't mind putting a blog post out that is essentially just a boiled down version of the podcast that I created. But there's no way that I would ask AI to create a podcast for me.
Yeah, exactly. And especially when at first when you read it, it is very like there isn't that, like you said, emotion to it, or it's very, very cliche, very,
Yeah.
because it probably takes off like different
It does.
tropes and stuff that we've
And
seen.
it goes in. I mean, they've been fed, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of novels and hundreds of scripts for movies and all of this. And so then it just kind of goes in and it sucks little pieces of it out, and it throws it back at you in a different format. There's no one novel that it's using completely, but essentially it's taken other people's words and put it back out there. AI doesn't really create. It just finds a way to pull from lots of different sources at the same time, which is something that you and I can't do, or can't do quickly.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of like plagiarism in a sense.
Yeah.
And I remember like that was such a huge thing, like especially in school, where it's like, never like steal other people's work, or
Right.
if you do, like have like a citation page of
Exactly.
like the work that you
Exactly.
have. And back then, AI wasn't as it was now, but you would see some students, kind of just copy and pasting off of like Wikipedia or something like that.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly. Right.
clearly,
Right.
especially if teachers kind of put that into like a computer and it's like it's checking all the stuff, it'll be like, oh hey,
Oh,
this was
look.
from
Yeah. Look, 2 words in a row were exactly from this article, right?
exact. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that happen before, and it's just like, and like even like with like creative writing, I've seen people kind of take words from other authors, and it's just, yeah, I mean, and obviously maybe that's not what they want to do. They're just kind of, just wanting to get the project done or whatever.
Right.
But
Right.
especially like as an artist, like that kind of hurts to see that.
It
But
does. It does. And I feel the same way when I see, a lot of the AI art that's being done. And it's like, is it good? It's acceptable. I mean, like if I needed something fast and it's just for a social media post or something like that, I mean, it's acceptable, but is it really art? And I don't think that AI produces art, whether that is written art or whether it is music or whether it is like, if there isn't the human input into it, you can see it on the other end.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of like, software and like websites and stuff where they are always advertising like, oh, like you can create AI images, AI videos, AI music, AI
Right.
this, AI that, and
Well, I mean, I saw one the other day that said you can write your own book in 24 hours using this AI program, and it's like, oh yeah, and it can you get the number of words down that will be book length? Sure, you can. Is it something that you really want to put your name on?
yeah, like that's for me, that would always be very risky because again, like going back to like those rules and stuff, I mean, you could probably get in trouble for like that sort of
Well,
thing. And
I would think so, and more than that, just ethically, like in my own mind, how would I ever be able to look someone in the face and say, yes, I wrote this, when I know full well that it wasn't me, that it was a machine that pulled from, hundreds of authors' works and created this, and now I'm trying to pull it off as my own.
yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's definitely like a scary thing. So I feel like just with anything technology wise, it's how you use it, because
Exactly.
it's like I said, it's such a powerful tool where if you abuse it, it can be very, very scary of like what we can create and what we can perceive as real when it really is fake, and it's
Right.
just such a, yeah, I
But
mean,
that's been true of technology from the beginning. There's good uses for it and there's bad uses for it. And so you have to determine for yourself, how are you going to use your technology? And if you're using AI like a tool, then you're using it correctly. But if you're using AI as your creative, that's how you be creative, well then I don't know that that's using it correctly. I think at that point you've crossed that line.
yeah, absolutely.
But of course that's AI according to Teri, so
Well, no, I think other people could agree with that, where it's like if you're just using AI and just kind of slapping your name on it, it's not that's not you. That's a computer, and it's like I said, it's
It
just
doesn't mean that you're creative because anybody can do that.
exactly, yeah. So, but again, thankfully there are people out there that know this, and they're not gonna let that AI stuff get to them because again, they're just gonna see that as another obstacle. We're gonna find a way around it, or we're gonna use it as, like you said, as a tool, and we'll use it maybe rather than fighting against it, we'll go with it. Like okay, I can use it for this and stuff, but I'm
This
not.
I can use it for these purposes, which now gives me more time to do the creative endeavors that I want to do.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So, hopefully, over time, more people will understand this and it'll be uh, more used in a more ethical approach. But I mean, only time will tell, and
exactly.
hopefully we'll see what happens. So we could start wrapping up right now. Before we leave, is there any final advice or last minute tips that you want to give to any up and coming artists that are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things I tell people is don't wait. Like go ahead and start whatever it is. If it's drawing, then start drawing. If it's writing, then start writing. You're not going to get better at something until you've started. That first piece that you do, whatever it isn't going to be very good, and that's okay. Picasso's first painting wasn't great either. You have to start somewhere. You have to learn how to use the brush and how to fill that brush with paint. And you have to figure out what words sound good next to one another. And you have to figure out what chords sound good together. All of those things. And you're not going to learn that by reading a book. You only really learn it by doing it. And so I tell people, don't wait. If it's something that you feel passionate about, go ahead and start now. At whatever level that is. And then as a writer, and true with any artist, once you've gotten it to a particular point where you feel pretty good about what you've produced, show it to someone else. And show it to someone who is going to be kind and honest. You don't want someone who just trashes you and knocks you down and makes you feel horrible about life. But you also don't want someone who says, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" and they don't give you any like real feedback. So you want someone who can tell you, here are the things I liked, here's some things that didn't sit with me as well, and then take that advice and go back and either edit or do a new project using that information or whatever that is, because growth is kind of the name of the game. You're going to start one place and you're going to end somewhere else. And I tell people all the time, they'll say like, which is your best book? And it's like, my last one. And it's my last one because I've learned, and whatever I learned from the book before, I've used in this new book. And then what my next book will be my best book. And the one after that will be better than that. And at the point that I can't say that, then I should be done writing.
Yeah. I definitely heard that phrase before, like, oh, what's your best film? It's the next one.
It's the next one.
It's the next one.
Yeah. And it's, my best one currently is my latest book, because I learned a lot of things from the other books and I used what I learned, but I've also since then learned more things. And if I wrote this book again, it would be different and better. And so in my next book, we'll see I will have moved forward in my craft. And I think that's the thing. So get started. Find a partner, someone who will tell you what they see that's good and bad, and then be willing to listen to that. Be able to say, okay, I hear what they're saying. How can I adjust what I'm doing? And then I think my final piece of advice for people is you do not have to listen to everyone, because not everyone is going to love what you do. There isn't an artist alive that every single person looks at their art and says, that is the best thing I've ever seen. There isn't a book written that every single person reads and says, that is the best author ever. Not everyone listens to the same musicians, right? And so it's okay to try something that someone suggested and realize that doesn't work for me. That isn't my style. It doesn't feel good. And so it's okay to also not listen to everyone. So definitely take advice, but be willing to learn for yourself what works and what feels good for you as an artist.
Absolutely. And I feel like, yeah, especially like when I first started, I mean, I would show like the stuff that I made to my family, and they were supportive, yes, absolutely, but they would also like give me some things to think about. So like, I make a film and they like, oh, I like this, and then, well, for your next film, maybe you can add this and stuff. So
Add this, or I really liked it, except it kind of got slow in the middle. Or, help you learn about pacing. It's like, oh, okay. So the next time, and then maybe the next one you went too fast. And they're like, okay, so you kind of, you learn. And you're not going to learn that until you do it, until you start putting it together. You can read 1,000 books on the craft of writing, and until you've started actually writing, it's not going to do you a lot of good.
yeah. And so like, yeah, it is important to get like a writing partner or just someone that can give you some honest critical feedback and just continue to also just support you, not
Like I said, kind but honest.
kind but honest. Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.